We've all been looking for joy in our lives. I'm not sure if we all have a good solid definition. It's like, I know it when I see it. But we're in a world that doesn't believe in the kind of joy the angel was proclaiming. Oh, somewhere in this favored land, the sun is shining light, right? The band is playing somewhere, and somewhere hearts are light. And somewhere men are laughing, and little children shout. But there is no joy in Mudville. The mighty Casey has struck out. That's not the joy the angel spoke of. I used to work downtown D.C. about 8 years, and during the football season, I hated going to work on Monday mornings. If the Redskins won, everybody was bouncing off. Oh, did you see what we did? If they lost, it was, they stink. I also used to commute with a guy who was from Chicago and the Bears. When they fired Ditka, he was beside himself. How can they do this? That's not the joy. Winning or losing teams is not the joy the angel spoke of when speaking to the shepherds tending their flocks outside Bethlehem. And that was a long time ago, but people are still looking for joy, but they're not looking for the kind of joy the angel spoke of. Now, let's take a look, see what the angel meant. See what the angel meant. When the angel spoke to the shepherds quaking in fear, I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all people. Now, when we hear this verse, we think, joy. But after he said joy, for all the people. Now, the birth of Jesus, of course, was great news. That proclamation, great joy for all the people. How has that worked out for all the people? I have to say, I don't think it has. I actually, because there was nothing else on last night, I turned on the news. Of course, I popped into the middle of a report about her being traded for an arms dealer out of Russia. Is that the joy we see? If you watch the news, it's violence. It's, of course, nobody wants to report good news. But that's why I quit watching the news. If you pick one that you agree with, then they keep going further and further away from what you might agree with. So when you can't turn back, it gets out of the way. You see, I think it's safe to say that we all hope to have this joy that the angel mentioned. Thousands of years before Christ was born, we have a hint about that. Proverbs 10:28. The hope of the righteous is joy, but the expectation of the wicked perishes. All the greed, all the jealousy, all the hatred, all the spite in this world, and there's a lot of it, can be defeated by letting the Holy Spirit replace them with His gifts, the gifts of the Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit. Galatians 5:22-23. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. And think about that list. How often do we see real love, real joy, real peace, forbearance. Whew, don't find that much. Kindness, that's getting very hard to find. But he ends it with self-control. I wondered for years why Paul ends on self-control. You might want to start with self-control, because if you've got self-control, you can overcome. Without self-control, how can we ever find true love or joy? Without self-control, how can we find peace? Without self-control, how can we find the hope we need? But with self-control, you can fill your heart with these fruits. And once you fill your heart, there's no room left for greed, jealousy, hatred. The things we see every day. The joy that that angel proclaimed was of the arrival of the Christ child, Emmanuel, God among us. Now, the Israelites have been waiting for a long time for this, but they didn't believe it. So they didn't get the great joy. See, these are joyous moments. The birth of a baby is a joyous moment. I remember being in the hospital when two of my three granddaughters were born. And you know, you can't do anything. But when you hear that voice, when you hear that cry, it is with joy your heart is filled. But that's not the joy the angel was speaking in. Being baptized into the family of God, that's a joyous moment. The return of a loved one who has been absent for too long is a joyous moment. I remember I was stationed overseas. I was stationed in Hokkaido, Japan, the northernmost island, and the coldest most island. And I left there, it was in March of 1969. That was a joyous moment. But that was not the joy proclaimed. But it was great. I felt good. You know, I had it out. I left Tokyo at 10 o'clock on the morning of July 3rd and arrived in San Francisco at 8 o'clock on the day before I left Tokyo. Now that, I'm still not sure how I, you know, and that included a stop in Hawaii just so they could drape the silly lays over you. But see, that's not the joy we get out of life. I mean, it's great getting home. I got home just in time to help celebrate my parents' wedding anniversary. You know, but that's not the joy we get from the birth of Christ. But as I was thinking about joy, I was reminded of the 33 miners in Chile who were they were in there. They were in the first probably 24 hours. They probably set their mind to the fact that they weren't ever getting out of there, ever. But they were all devout Catholics, and as such, they turned to the Lord for comfort. And when they turned to the Lord for comfort, after all the time that they spent there, all the despair, when they heard the drill, tonight, you're in practically total darkness, got very little to eat or drink for ever, and you got to feel abandoned. But they never felt abandoned by their God. And when they heard that, they heard the drill, and along came this opening, and down came word that you're going to get out. But see, they put their faith in the Son of God in prayer. So they knew. I remember some guy from here in the United States had the only equipment, I think, on the face of the earth that was available to drill down. And think about this. I've thought about this a number of times. They send down this tube. And into this tube steps one man at a time. And they're pulled up. Now, while you're in that tube, you can't see anything. And you got to be scared. Of course, see, in my world, in my life, my thought was, I probably couldn't fit in there. So they'd have to leave me behind for a few weeks. But every one of them guys, every one of them were pulled up through that little tube. And when they stepped into the sunlight, put their families away from their wives, their children, that's the joy that was being proclaimed. They sought the Lord's help in getting out. John 16, verse 24. Until now, you have not asked for anything in my name. Ask, and you will receive, and your joy will be complete. Ask, and you will receive. Now, one thing about this particular verse is it doesn't say when you'll receive it, but it says you will receive. So, Mighty Casey struck out, and that was no joy in Mudville. I'd hate to live in a place called Mudville to begin with, but you can't put your hopes for joy, you can't put your expectations on professional athletes. I used to get this, what's your favorite team? Well, why should I bother wasting my time rooting for a bunch of millionaires who may or may not even know what town they're in? I used to travel to North Carolina a lot on business, and it was nothing to have another one of the Charlotte players overturn his car doing 120 or whatever. And they were always in trouble. That is not who you want to put your trust and hope for joy. You want to put your trust for hope and joy in the Christ child. His birth starts the process by which we, you and me, can find joy. Now, those moments may be few and far between, but as long as we stay in our relationship with Christ, we will find joy. Yeah? Eternal joy, temporary joy. Christ brings both. Romans 15, verse 13. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace. Amen. Let us stand, join in the closing hymn and red hymnal number 138, Angels We Have Heard on High.